Where's his right wing? He's just lost his wing. No! Amazing!
Hey, good morning. How's everyone doing this morning? So good to see you here in Theater 6. If you're joining us online, welcome, welcome, welcome. Or if you're across the hall in Theater 2, if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Garry. I'm one of the pastors here. Really glad that you're here today with us. So, what'd you think? Pretty crazy. Imagine being the passenger in that. That video first hit YouTube a few years back, and within 2 weeks, it had amassed over 3 million views. And it's no wonder. I mean, that was a miracle. Or was it? Turns out it wasn't. It was faked. Some guy took some actual footage of an air show and then cleverly inserted some footage of a remote control airplane, a model airplane, and made it look as if this pilot had pulled off this incredible landing. And you got to admit, he did a pretty good job. I mean, there's a couple of times where you'd say, I'm not sure, but you know, when he lands and you see the guy getting out of the plane, you're like, what? Maybe it did happen, right? A lot of people thought it was true. And then the truth came out. And that's when they thought, what do you believe? Happens in life all the time, doesn't it? We hear or see something that we just assume it's true or real because it kind of makes sense to us. And then we discover that maybe it wasn't. This is especially true. This really shows up when it comes to things like that aren't as concrete. Things like, God, faith. And that's why we're wrapping up we did this series that we're wrapping up today called Deconstruction. Because oftentimes, what deconstruction is, in the context of Christianity, it's this. It's the process of dismantling long-held beliefs that we've had about God. Yeah, and often those beliefs, those views that we hear about God, think about God, picture God being like, are ones that we've received or inherited or adopted from our parents, maybe a Sunday school teacher from when we were a little kid, or a podcast or a movie, something like that. But then, as we got older and began experiencing life, like kind of getting out into the real world, some of those beliefs kind of didn't really seem to hold up anymore. And it's like, is it really true what I'm believing? And so we begin the process of deconstruction to kind of work through what's true and what's not. And as evidenced in that opening clip, man, we are surrounded by false images, fake news, public lies, phony personalities, counterfeit causes. We know that there's truth out there somewhere, and there's a part of us that is searching for it. But I would suggest it is getting harder and harder to discern and even find it anymore. We want to believe in God or some higher power that is in control of things. But with so many competing ideas out there, it's hard to know what to believe anymore. And so, ironically, the only thing we can really be sure of is the doubts we have about the thing that we believe in, which seems kind of weird, but it's true. Now, I don't know about you. You'll learn this if you sign up for class too, but every once in a while, when you read through the Bible, and this happens to me all the time, I'll be reading through the Bible, and I'll find myself captivated, like drawn in by somebody's story that's in there. I'll just relate to that person somehow. And that's what I think is so awesome about the Bible. It seems like this, it's an ancient text that was written thousands of years ago, and we can think, well, what relevance does that have with us today? Well, here's the thing. The people that were in the Bible, written about, they were concerned and puzzled by the same things you and I are. They were concerned about things like money, relationships, sex, all that stuff, and doubt. They had their doubts too, and they were trying to work through it. And that's what's so beautiful about the Bible. It's so raw and honest and real about that. And so there's this guy that I can relate to, and maybe you can too. His name is Thomas. He's come to be known as Doubting Thomas, which kind of isn't really fair, but maybe that's how you know him. It's like, oh yeah, I've heard that saying before, Doubting Thomas. Like many of us, Thomas, he wanted to believe. He just didn't know if there was anyone or anything out there to really concretely believe in. He was open to believing, but he also had some big doubts, some questions. And never more so than to the person, Jesus. Now, Thomas's story is a really interesting one. It begins at the time when Jesus kind of stepped out of obscurity and into the public eye. And Jesus was going around town to town, and he was teaching this radical new way to live and relate to one another and relate to God. He was healing people and, doing these physical healings, but he was trying to show that, hey, this physical healing is actually a picture of what's going on spiritually for you. You can't see things. You're blind. And I want to give you eyes to see the truth. Well, eventually, Jesus ended up, all these people started following Jesus. Every time he showed up somewhere, there's just throngs of people. And what Jesus did is he kind of said, okay, I want to just get a group of people together, like my inner circle. And so he chose 12 men. Personal invitation. Come, follow me. And it was an interesting group, to be sure. Look into their backgrounds. They weren't the religious elite. They weren't the ones that had it all together, never did anything wrong. No, they were made up of crusty, uncouth fishermen. I used to be a fisherman. Disreputable financial players. One of them was actually a two-faced scoundrel. His name was Judas. And then, of course, in that mix was this seeker named Thomas. And what's interesting is that even though Thomas had questions, he didn't have all the answers, he still accepted Jesus' invitation to come, follow me. I think part of Thomas's search for what was real and authentic and true was because he himself wanted to be that. He wanted to be real. He wanted to be authentic. And you can see that in what happens next in Thomas's story. Again, Jesus had been going around town to town, and he was kind of flipping everything upside down. He was making waves, so to speak, so much so that the religious establishment had moved from being irritated by him to actually feeling very threatened by him. And so they plotted to take him out. They wanted to kill him. And so Jesus was in this province named Judea doing his thing, and they said, okay, let's get him. But Jesus kind of evades their plot, and he gets out of dodge, so to speak. But then something happens. Just a short time later, Jesus receives word that his really good friend, a man named Lazarus, has become seriously ill. And we heard about this story at the beginning of this series when our regional director, David Harita, shared. But just quickly, Lazarus' sisters, Mary and Martha, they sent for Jesus because they believed that he could heal their brother. And so they sent word like, hey, he's sick. There's one problem. Lazarus and Mary and Martha lived in Judea, the very place that they just tried to kill Jesus. But Jesus gets word that his friend is sick, and he doesn't even bat an eye. And interesting, neither did Thomas. Check this out. It says, then Jesus said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. But Rabbi, a short while ago, the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you want to go back there? Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going to go there and wake him up. And his disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he'll get better. Because we all know, right? There's nothing better than sleep to get better, right? Jesus had been speaking of his death. But his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there. Why would he say that? So that you may believe. But let us go to him. And that's when Thomas said this. Listen to this. Then Thomas said to the rest of the disciples, let's go, that we may die with him. Thomas may not have been sure about Jesus' divinity or where he was going to land spiritually by following Jesus, but it seems pretty clear that in this moment in time, he was committed not only to Jesus as a person, but to those he was following and journeying with. Thomas may not have been sure what he believed, but he very much felt like he belonged. I'm a part of this group, this small community. And I would suggest that sense of belonging was an integral part of the spiritual journey. We're going to see that play out as we go through this story. But Thomas, he wasn't afraid, even though he was searching, he wasn't afraid to say stuff like this, listen, I'm struggling with how I can know what is true and what's authentic about all of this and Jesus and following him. I know there's spiritual truth out there, but I also know there's spiritual falsehood out there, and I'm trying to put it all together. I'm confused about it all. But you know what? I'm willing to learn. And the best way to learn is to ask questions. But here's what happened. One day, all of those questions just kind of boiled over. Thomas he couldn't stand it anymore. There's this time that Jesus was saying to this circle of friends of his, these disciples, he was saying, look guys, he's talking about his death. He says, I'm going away. In a little while, I'm going away. But you know the way to where I'm going. And that's when Thomas is like, okay, I'm done with this. And he sits Jesus down and he says, look, I just want you to be straight with me, okay? Just give me a straight answer. I'm going to ask you a question. Just answer me straight up. I can take it. Whatever the answer is, I can take it. And so here's what Thomas said. Jesus says, I'm going away, preparing a place for you, and when it's ready, I'm going to come back and get you, but you know the way to me. And Thomas said, Lord, how can we know the way? How can I know which spiritual path is true and right? Jesus answered, Thomas, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really knew me, you would know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. Thomas asked Jesus the biggest spiritual question of all. How can we know the way? How can we know what's right? How do we know that's true? How can we know the spiritual path to follow with all the different ideas that are out there? Jesus just said straight up, Thomas, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. In me you have what is real and genuine. You have been wondering and questioning whether anybody or anything is authentic. And Thomas, I don't know how I can make this any clearer for you, but I am. I am the way. You don't have to wonder anymore. If you've seen me, you've seen God. Follow me. Build your life around me. Not around the ideas of culture, but around me. And from that point on, something changed in Thomas. Something clicked. And he said, it was, in essence, what he said was, okay, I've seen enough. I've heard enough. And now that I've heard it straight from you, Jesus, I'm in. I'm sold. And the story ends with Jesus and Thomas holding hands, walking off into the sunset. Actually, it doesn't, right? I don't know what your spiritual journey's been like, but if it's been anything like mine, it's been up here, it's been down there, it's been over here, it's been over there. It's all over the map. And, for you, maybe you felt that God didn't answer a specific prayer that you had. You were going through a struggle, maybe health or financial, and you're praying and asking God for help. Nothing. It's like you're praying to a brick wall. Maybe you had someone you looked up to disappoint you. Maybe you've been in a situation where you got burned by people who called themselves Christians. Or maybe you read something, heard something, saw something that made you feel, it just filled you with raging doubts about the whole Christian God, Jesus, church thing. And now you're asking questions. That's exactly what happened to Thomas. Even though he knew Jesus, had heard him say, look, I am God in the flesh. I am Emmanuel, God with you, God with us. I am the long-awaited Messiah. He knew that Jesus was God in the flesh. That's the Christmas story. He knew that Jesus came to lay down his life so that you and I and everyone could be connected back to God after his resurrection that first Easter. Jesus even told them when and where it was going to happen. And so when Jesus was arrested, jailed, and executed on a Roman cross, and nails were pounded through his hands and his feet, and a spear thrust into his side, as he hung there dying in public, all of a sudden it was like the wheels in Thomas's spiritual life just came blowing off. I mean, Thomas was devastated. It was as if everything that he had believed in had been thrown into question. Hence deconstruction. He loved Jesus. He wanted to follow him. He wanted to believe in him, and he wanted to trust him. But now in his mind, with what just happened, he's like, well, I guess I have nothing now. It was just all a crock. I've been duped. I mean, he believed that Jesus was God. But he was probably thinking to himself, well, you can't kill God, but I just watched Jesus die, so how do I reconcile all that? For all intents and purposes, Thomas was in full deconstruction mode. He's pulling apart all the pieces that didn't seem to fit anymore. He had had enough. Maybe you're there. You've had some things happen in your life, and it just does not line up with what you believe to be true about God and Jesus. And it's just like, just not sure anymore. Thomas was like that. He just wanted to be left alone. And I see this happen all the time with people. When they bump up against something that doesn't make sense, they just withdraw. Because that's what we do, don't we? We withdraw. We want to be somewhere where it's quiet, where we can just run things through our head and try and figure it out. But we try and do it on our own. And we'll just naturally come to our own conclusions without pressure testing it, bouncing it off other people. And that's what happened with Thomas. He began to question everything, and he just withdrew. And then something really interesting happens. The biblical story tells us that 3 days after Jesus' resurrection, he appeared to the disciples. All of them except one, Thomas, because he was off trying to figure things out on his own. It says, now Thomas was not with the disciples when Jesus came. But it's interesting what happens here. So the other disciples went to him and told him, we have seen the Lord. They didn't just abandon him, leave him to his own devices. They went to him and they said, we've seen Jesus. But he said to them, and this is understandable, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I'm not believing it. Man, you can hear his emotion, his confusion. I mean, Thomas is not some belligerent skeptic with a chip on his shoulder that's out to disprove the existence of God or the hypocrisy of the church or the people that make up the church. This is somebody who didn't want his heart ripped out anymore. All that he had come to believe and was all of a sudden brought into question. And he wasn't about to be carried away by some, false hopes or wishful thinking. It's like he was saying, you know what, guys, I admire you for your faith, for hanging in there. But you know what? Like the band sang a couple of weeks ago, I'm all out of faith. I'm laying on the floor broken. I'm losing my religion. Not really interested anymore. I mean, how am I supposed to believe what you just said happened after what just happened? Don't get me wrong, I still believe in God, a higher power, but there's been too much confusion around this Jesus guy for me to keep following. Thanks, but no thanks. You ever been there? I certainly have. So here's a question. What do you think Jesus thought about that? Thought about Thomas? I mean, if Jesus is really God in human form, he knew everything, right? He knew everything about that was in Thomas's heart. So what do you think his reaction would be to Thomas? Jesus had told the truth to Thomas time and time again. He had spent 3 years with him, pouring his life into him. And now all he hears is doubts. Oh, I don't believe it. It's not true. Didn't happen. You think Jesus was frustrated, irritated, disappointed, angry? A week later, his disciples were at the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you," which is probably because they were like, how'd you get in here? Then he said to Thomas, I love this. Don't miss this. He looks him right in the eye and he said, Thomas, put your finger here. Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. And listen to Thomas's reaction. He said to him, my Lord and my God. God, the creator of the universe and everything in it, looked at Thomas with love and compassion and mercy and grace and understanding in his eyes, and in essence said, Thomas, it's okay that you doubted. It's okay. I'm not going to zap you for doubting. But here, put your hand here. Touch this. See this. Hold this. Remember, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You don't have to doubt anymore. Now, you might be sitting there thinking or listening online going, yeah, well, you know what? If Jesus showed up for me like that, I'd probably say, oh, my Lord, my God, too, right? It would go a long way to clear some things up, wouldn't it? I'm totally with you on that. But you know what? So's Jesus. He's totally with you on that. At the end of his appearance, Jesus had some final words for Thomas, but I think they're more final words for us that we can take home. Then Jesus told him, Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. But check out what Jesus says next. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Speaking about you and me. Put another way, he's saying, Thomas, you know why you believe? You believe because I just did a slam dunk on you. Like I just pulled out all the stops. You believe because you have had a first-hand interaction with me, both before and now after my death. I just removed all your doubts, just like that. Because your belief, your faith, your trust, you matter to me. And I want you to believe. But here's the thing, Thomas. In the years to come, there will be millions more just like you. Same questions, same doubts. But they won't have the benefit of a first-hand interaction like you've just had. You have belief because of all you have seen and touched. But in years to come, there will be many who come to where you are right now on the same journey. And they'll do it without having seen me the way you saw me. But despite them not seeing me that way, they're still going to believe. And they are going to be able to experience what you have experienced. The way, the truth, and the life. So the question I throw out is, what about your search for what is real and true? Where are you? Maybe you're on a journey to figure out what is authentic and what is real and what is true. And when you look at the life of Jesus, there's a part of you that thinks, man, I'm getting close to something here. Something's resonating. But then the doubts come, the questions come, and the fear and the anxiety and the confusion that comes with it. And if that describes you, I just want you to know you're not the only one. In fact, I think it's part of our journey. I think we're always going to go through a deconstruction process. But it's to reconstruct a more robust, resilient faith. Author and pastor Tim Keller likes to say, be a thinking Christian. Think about what you're believing and why you're believing it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want to leave you with 3 things that Thomas did that I think you and I could, we would do well to kind of follow as we find ourselves deconstructing at whatever point, okay? The first thing Thomas did was he gave himself permission to go into full experiential search mode. In other words, he wasn't afraid to ask questions. No question's a dumb question. Just ask your question. It's something all of us can do, no matter where you are on your journey. You can come here, you can listen, you can watch, you can hear, you can learn. You can get a taste of what worship is all about. You can get an idea of what following Jesus looks like. But most of all, you can make friends, build relationships where you together can work through these questions, these doubts. Like Russ was mentioning at the beginning, that's why we call our discipleship pathway the river. Because we really believe that a journey with Jesus is not static. It's moving all the time. And you know what? Just like a river, there's going to be times where it's bumpy, where it's smooth, where there's a back eddy, you get a bit of a rest, but it's always moving. And no matter where you find yourself, you can jump into the river and just start your journey. Second thing Thomas was willing to do is he was willing to open up his relational world and his feelings to Jesus, which for the guys are like, oh, feelings. But did you notice that Thomas never closed his heart off? Rather, he let his heart become familiar with the heart of Jesus. And he did it by spending time with him, talking with him, which is praying, getting to know him to the point that when the chips were down, he was willing to die for him. You can do the same thing too. You can begin to open yourself up, your heart, to Jesus and to those that are in this community and journey together. Just know that you can belong here before you believe. The best way to get plugged in and participate and start to work through that is serve on a team. I know we say it up here all the time, but I will say firsthand from my own experience, if you want to get to know people, if you want to ask those questions, serve on a team, man. That's where you get to know people. Join a connection group. Go on our app. You can find the groups on there. Attend events like our TMP hangout today. It's easy to say, I'm going to go do this. There's no agenda today, except smile and say hi to someone maybe you haven't seen for a while. That's it. And thirdly, Thomas kept the door open to allow Jesus to prove himself as being real, that he was the way, the truth, and the life. And as Thomas went through his toughest part of his spiritual journey, the death of Jesus, he didn't completely shut the door on him or his faith. When his friends showed up, sharing with him that Jesus is alive, he didn't just go, get out of here. I never want to see you again. No, he went with them. And Jesus showed up. He'll show up for us too. On your faith journey, challenges and doubts are going to come. There's going to be times when you're absolutely perplexed. I don't know how this works. And that's okay. It's not about knowing the answers. It's about trust. Trusting that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And if you're here and you're kind of where Thomas was, like, I'm not really sure how this all fits together, again, awesome. Love that you're here. Keep coming back. Get plugged in. But I want to say, if you're feeling discouraged in that, like you're ready to just go, you know what? I just don't think this is true. I think there's other ways. This just isn't the only way. I just want to share a thought that maybe Thomas would like to share with you or with me if we find ourselves there. And I think he would say this to you or to me. Hang in there. Hang in there. See it through. Give God the benefit of the doubt. Because that may be when everything gets authenticated and validated for you in the most profound way. That's what he did with me. And I think the same will happen for you. So what do you say? I am so honored to be on this journey with you. And I don't have it all figured out. I'm relying on you guys as I go on my journey. So let's rely on each other. Really glad that we're here together on this journey together. Let's pray. God, again, we just thank you for who you are. But in the marketplace, there's so many competing ideas that can press in on even those core beliefs that we have about you, that you are the one true God. There is no other God except you. In this world that's so inclusive, we just want to include everybody, that can seem almost arrogant or narrow-minded or pig-headed. But we're reminded in just a few minutes when we do communion and we remember what you did for us. You did it compelled by nothing but love for us. You could have easily just said, well, I'm going to just leave them on their own and that's the end of that. But you chose to give us a way back, and you are that way, and we just thank you for that. Be with us as we work through our doubts, our questions, because you know you're a faithful God, and you will show up. And you'll let us know exactly what we need to know, exactly when we need to know it. And that's what makes you so awesome. And we pray all of these things in your name. Amen.